I'm Jeff Byers, and I'll be taking you through the process of taking your mesh, your face mesh, into ZBrush and unwrapping the UVs. We'll be using ZBrush R4 version 3 and Maya. I'm using Maya 2012. So here's your face that has been smoothed one time. Before you do this, you got to make sure that your eyes are in place and everything's fitting correctly. You do not want to have any gaps. So if you need to make adjustments before you smooth it, that would be the best time to do it. Plus, the face is not completely symmetrical, so one side of your face is going to be a little bit lower, one ear is going to be lower than the other. You just have to look really closely that you can see that I modeled this exactly to my reference, so it is different on each side. It makes it a little more difficult to texture, but it looks a lot more realistic. This is smoothed at 1, so I've got about 6,426 polygons, which is very low. I've got my ear attached. I had to smooth it once to attach the ear. It really depends on how you modeled your character face. So what you need to do now is you need to make sure you clean this up. Go to Edit, Delete by Type History, and Modify Freeze Transformations. And you need to make sure that you name your geometry, and you need to get rid of all your layers except for the layers that actually you need the layers for the head and the eyes. Separate those two, put them in layers. Okay, and once you get that done, we're ready to export this out. So you need to make sure that you go into Windows Settings, Preferences, Plugin Manager, and make sure that OBJ, export OBJ is on. So OBJ export.mll, load and auto load, refresh, and close. You need to have the object selected. Go to File, Export Selection, into the option box. You don't need to change anything here. OBJ export, export selection. Make sure that file type is at export OBJ, and go ahead and name this your name of the head. And something like export ZBrush. Okay. Alright, so let's go ahead and export, and we're done with this right now. So what we'll do is, since we have this in a layer, we'll go ahead and hide that, hide the eyes. We'll actually leave the eyes in there, and we'll go into ZBrush, and you have your tool here that you can open and close. A couple things I want to talk to you about ZBrush: that when you open up your object, your mesh, you're going to have to click on Edit immediately, or the key T. And a couple things, if you mess things up, you can always restart by going a new document. Also, some of the things that we're going to be looking for and using are going to be under Transform, and we're going to use asymmetry or use symmetry. And that's going to be under Transform. Once something is brought in, you're going to have those functions. We're also going to use a Z plugin called UV Master, so make sure you have that plugged in. Now, if you have ZBrush at home, you're going to need to go on to the where ZBrush is and Pixelogic website, and actually load or find the plugin and load it. It's very easy to load. And then we're going to be using this menu, which is the texture. So we'll take you through all that. Anyway, we're going to import our object. So we're going to go in there and find. So on my computer's documents, Maya, projects, and let's see, where's it at? There it is. And scenes, and we called it Dave Export ZBrush. So we're going to open that up. And it's opened right here. It tells me there is 6,426 polygons. I'm double clicking that. And I'm going to open that up. And I'm going to hold the shift key so I can get it set up just like that. Before I do anything else, again, hit the T key or the edit button up here. Now I can rotate around by holding down my left mouse button. Holding down the control and the left mouse button will let you do masking. Hold down the control key and the right mouse button lets you zoom. Holding down the alt key and the left mouse button lets you move back and forth. It's a little different than Maya. You'll get used to it. So anyway, I kind of want to place it in here. We also got frame. That frames the object. We also have move, that if I select that button I can move it around, or I got scale here. So you have everything here that you need. If you're not comfortable holding down the alt or the control to move things around. Also have, I can show poly on object. I'll turn that off, but I like to work in perspective, so I'm going to click on perspective up here. If you don't like it, you can turn it off. It's no big deal. So it's more like Maya when you turn it on. Okay. Alright, so let's get started. We're going to need to UV map this. So the first thing we're going to do is go into UV map, and we're going to click on the texture size that we'd like to use. Right now, we're going to go ahead and use 2048 by 2048. Now, we'll probably end up using 4096 by 4096, but I'm going to just show you how to do it with 2048 because the resolution of this is going to be just tremendously big. So we're going to make sure that our reference images are going to be able to handle 2048 by 2048. And we'll talk about that as we go along. But for this lesson, we're going to do 2048 by 2048. It's already set that big. You could go 4096, but you need to. We're going to do one at 2048 and then one at 4096. So let's click on 2048. Rotate around a little bit, and we're going to go in here to Z plugin and click on UV Master, and I'm going to go ahead and drop this in here. There we go. So you notice that I clicked on that little button that looks like this, and it dropped it in here, so we want to be able to use it whenever we want. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Work on Clone. Okay? This will turn it white. This is just basically what ZBrush needs to do. Now it gives us a white texture on our object. It's not really our object, so we're going to have to copy and paste the UVs when we're done. So just so you know that. Okay? And this is just make sure you understand that this is the one that I brought in because I can see it says Dave Head Export ZBrush 1. So when we're finished, we're going to have to double click on that and copy and paste the UVs. So just so you know, that's where it is. That's your original. This is your copy. So what we're going to do now is we want to enable control painting. Okay. Now ZBrush has a really cool little function here that allows you to be able to paint seams or where you want seams to be in real time. So it's kind of cool. So we're going to start at the very top. So kind of arrange your head. So we're at the kind of the top of the head. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and paint. So we're going to do a really fine line. So I just right clicked. I right-clicked over anywhere, and this opens up your palette. You can change the draw size and everything. So now I'm going to click on Attract. We want to attract the seam to go straight down the back. We don't want to see it in the front. So I'm going to start something right there. And we're going to go directly in the center of the head. Don't worry, you can stop. And I'm going to rotate down and move this up and rotate a little bit more. There we go. And so I'm going to continue down the back of the head in blue. I stopped a little bit and I'm going to move it up and continue down. This works better with the tablet, but I'm just using a mouse right now. Okay. Now I'm going to rotate around and move down. There we go. And now I'm going to paint the front of the face, and that's called Protect. So I'm going to click on Protect, and I'm going to bring the draw size up a little bit higher. And this is going to paint, we're going to protect this area, so we do not want it to actually show on here. I mean, we don't want to have the seam in the front. So we're going to rotate around here, and we're going to get around the ear. We want to protect the ear. And I put a lot of more emphasis on protecting than I do on the actual attract. So I'm going to protect a lot more area here. So ZBrush has no reason to exclude it. So I'm going to go ahead and move that up, and I'm going to get all down the chin in the front. Basically not giving ZBrush a chance to make a mistake. Alright, so I got the whole front of the head. That looks good. And basically that's it. That's all you have to do. So you can see that line. So what's going to happen now is that the seam's going to start right about there, and I could probably go a little bit higher. So I'm going to do Attract again, bring that back down, I don't know, something like that, and continue painting up to the front. There we go, like that. So it's going to split right there and open it up. That should be good. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and frame. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we are going to check this map. So I'm going to unwrap it. So after we do all this painting, we're going to unwrap. Okay. And then we're going to check it by going unflatten. So we're going to deflatten it. So it looks like it split it right down the center, right where I wanted it. That's perfect. Just a little sideways, but that's okay. And so so I'm very happy with that. I'm gonna unflatten, bring it back, and because the map is on the actual object, the clone, we've got to copy UVs. We have to go down here and double click this guy right here. That's our original. Double click on it, and then paste UVs. Okay? So now we're going to just kind of minimize that, and I'm going to export this mesh, and this time we're going to go in here and we're going to go to ZBrush, and we're going to go UV. So this has our UVs, so we're going to save it. We're going to minimize that. Okay, we're going to go open up Maya. And since we don't have our original in here, we're going to go into, because I have it on a layer, I'm going to go to Import. And we're going to find our ZBrush UV OBJ right here. Import that in. Notice that it's going to be a little bit fragmented, or we can see the faces. So we're going to go select edges, select all the edges. We'll go ahead and smooth them. Normals, soften. So now let's check what our map looks like in here. So we're going to go to Window, UV Texture Editor, and they look pretty good, except they're just kind of cattywampus. So we're going to click on the UVs, and we are going to rotate them. That does too much. So we're going to go ahead and hit the E key, and you can make you can see my scale of this thing's too big, so I'm going to go ahead and make that a little bit smaller by hitting the plus or the minus. So if you have something really big or really small, so we're going to hit it, make it pretty small here. So I'm going to zoom in there, I'm going to select the yellow circle and rotate around. And the way I'm going to make sure that this thing is exactly centered correctly, I'm going to hit the W key and move it around so it matches the top grid. So we're going to match the top grid here, and we're also going to scale it up proportionately and move it over. We're going to fit these UVs in there really tight. Okay, it's a little bit too big. There we go. Alright. Okay, let's move that up, and let's zoom in here and make sure that we are perfectly aligned. We're getting close. It's really essential that you get this really spot on. Okay, that looks really good. Make sure no UVs are going outside of the UV map texture space. Alright, so you can see that there's no way we're going to be able to fill up the whole texture space. We're probably only using about 65% or 70% of the texture space, which is fine. We're not doing gaming. If we were doing gaming, we'd have to put the head in the corner and put the body around it. But right now, we're just doing portraits for entertainment, so we're going to leave it the way it is. Okay, so the texture should be completed, so we're going to go ahead and save that texture, do a UV snapshot of it, and let's do 2048. Okay, and we're going to browse, and we are in images, so we are going to do let's see, do Dave UVs. Alright, and we want to make sure that's target, so we're going to click OK. This is just a backup if we were going to texture the object ourselves. Okay. Giving us an error that basically is telling us we need to be in object mode. So if that happens to you, just make sure you're in object mode before you do this. Okay, so we'll do it again, and make sure you have your settings. So we've got Dave, face, UV. Okay, now this should save OK. Make sure target selected and click OK. And it worked. Okay, so now these are our UV'd. So we got it UV'd out. So now we need to go into export again. So we need to export selection as an OBJ. So we need to export selection, and this time we've got ZBrush UV, and then we're going to do finish FIN and export. So now we know that UV is finished. Export selection, and now we're ready to use Spotlight to add the texture to the face. We'll come back with another tutorial.